Okay, what I'd like to do, as long as I'm providing the 3D print files for the parts that I've made for the Stratocycle, I thought I would make a quick video just to walk through some of the things that I did to assemble mine. Of course, you can assemble yours however you like. Since I've only assembled one of these, but since I went through the process, I can share with you some of the things that I learned. This is the Stratocycle. This was created from a stunt cycle, one of the new stunt cycles from California Creations. So what I did, let me put this to the side. This is a new stunt cycle. You can see I'm working on another one. I started by painting the gas tank, full tank, and the left and right side. I also painted the fender blue to match the Stratocycle color. The paint that I used is Testors 1210T bright blue spray paint. And then for the red, I used Testors 1203 gloss red if you're wanting to use similar paint. So I started by painting the bike. Let me put this off to the side. With the 3D parts, the STL files, you'll get basically everything here. Now, these aren't the perfect parts here. Some of these are prototype parts that I've been working with. I didn't have time to print a full set for this video because I wanted to get it out as soon as possible, but this should illustrate what you'll have. There's a tail. We've got the left and right side of the fairing. There's a helmet in there. And then I've got a trick bar. The new trick bar accommodates the wider tail. And then there is a windscreen. This is optional. If you want to use this, you can or not. One thing I did for the trick bar and the windscreen, I printed these using a translucent resin, something that's pretty clear. And if you look at the Stratocycle, you can see that the windshield there is relatively transparent, which is what that was the effect I was looking for. What I did to get that, after this piece came out of the printer, I cured it. And after it was cured, I went over it with some micro mesh sanding pads. You can get these on Amazon. It goes everything from probably like 800 grit all the way up to 12,000 grit. So if you sand this on both sides, you can polish that down to where it's almost like a contact lens. So that's how I got the windshield to look like it does. So these parts will obviously have to be painted. They may have to be sanded if you do this yourself or if you have somebody else print it. Since these parts came from a resin printer, they may have a little acne on them from where the supports were created from the resin. So that snaps off when it's done, but you may want to take and sand these to create a smoother finish. And one recommendation I would make where the fairing comes together, I would recommend against, and this is a failed print, that's why it's kind of broken up here. I would recommend against sanding these edges because when they come out of the printer, they will fit together perfectly edge to edge. But I made the mistake, I was sanding that and I rounded them off, and then they didn't go together so well in one of the versions that I worked on. So the way it works, I painted both of these parts in blue, painted them full blue, and then I painted the bottom half red and up under the wings red. I then painted this blue. I painted the tail. One thing I would recommend if you're going to paint the exhaust pipes and everything, I would recommend painting the pipes and the area inside the pipes first, and then tape this off and then spray the rest. I made the mistake of spraying it all, then painting this, and then I had to tape it off and spray it again to fix the areas that I messed up with the tail. So to affix this to the motorcycle, it snaps right on. All I have to do is kind of pry that apart, and if I push that forward, it snaps right in place. The holes here line up with the holes for the trick bar. So and then once that goes on, that's held on there pretty good, doesn't require any glue. Let me take and kind of snap that off. When it comes to the fairing, if there's anything complicated to this process, this will be it. If we look at the inside of the fairing, you can see there's a tab. This tab fits in this gap between the motor and this little boxy part on the motorcycle. Also notice there's a peg here. This peg lines up with the indentation for the rivet, and that's consistent on both sides. You'll also find that there's a little ring on here. That is something that I'm going to use. I'm actually going to be making a variation of this fairing that I'm going to be using for jumping purposes. So I'm going to use that to run zip ties through it. I won't be gluing that one. I want to be able to create parts that I can replace. So I decided to leave that little ring in there. And you know what this works good for? I found, even though I'm not using the ring for the part, if you have these little paper clips, I can clip right on there, and it makes a nice vehicle to hold this while you're spray painting it. So if you're wondering why the little ring's there. Now, the tail snaps right on the bike. The way this works, this will go, push this up. This will go up against the bike. So it goes right in that gap. The peg goes down in the hole down there at the bottom. So hopefully you can visualize the other piece going on. Now, I painted the stuff first, and then when you put the second half on here, it's going to be under a little bit of stress. You'll have to squeeze the front together. I use this DAP or DAP super glue for that. So I ran a little bead around there, and I glued these together. So I had to squeeze it and hold it at the nose first, wait like 30 seconds till it glued, and then I flipped it over, and then I had the same thing. I had to squeeze it together. I had to put a little glue on the edge there and squeeze it together to get those pieces to come together and glue. That's what holds it to the motorcycle. It's actually got a little bit of a grip on it there, and the tab here and this peg is what holds it in place firmly. So that's how those two pieces work. Trick bar goes on then, and then the windscreen, the shape, the opening there, the cavity will be right where you put this. Couple other things that worked very well for me. The seam when the fairing comes together. Where the fairing comes together, if you don't like the seam, fantastic product called Milliput that I used. This is kind of like Bondo for models. I took and put a bead of that on there and put a little water on my finger and smoothed that down and then sanded it. And that created a nice rounded front where you can't see that seam. So if you want to do something similar, you can do that. The helmet. Here is a painted version of this helmet. Actually, I modeled it in white resin, and then I painted it white. But the decals that are on here, I'll be providing a PDF of these decals. It'll be enough to do 5 helmets, or if you make some mistakes, it'll be enough to make less than 5. But I'm using water slide decal paper, and you can print this on your inkjet printer. And once you print it on the printer, your inkjet printer is obviously the ink's not going to be water safe or water soluble. So you just spray it with a little Mod Podge. Do 3 coats of that on there, and then you can create decals just like a regular model. And man, that works out nice. They're so thin that it looks like it's painted on that helmet. When it comes to the decals for the bike, I will be giving you a decal sheet as a PDF. I wish I had an untouched one here, but you can see I was consuming this to create stickers for the actual bike. There's more stars than what you need. And I created for the stripes, the shapes that you see here is the bottom edge of the motorcycle and then the area under the wing. So you'll still have to cut it out with an X-Acto knife, but I kind of left the shape on there so you can see how the spacing is. That's how the spacing will work underneath the bike. So if we flip that over, you can see how the stickers go underneath the wings. I also, just as another tip, if you're interested, when I put these stickers on, I did the stickers and stuff before I put the stickers here, before I put the fairing on the bike. So that way I could wrap the stickers around behind, which is a little bit easier when the motorcycle's not in the way. Okay, one last thing. Let me say I am not a professional toy maker. I'm just someone who has a version of AutoCAD and a 3D printer. I wish I could say that these parts will just work spectacular for play and that they'll fit perfectly on your bike. They should. All that being said, you may have to do a little bit of sanding to get these to come together, exactly the way you want. So I wish I could guarantee that, but everybody's situation is different. If you decide you want to jump with one of these, you certainly can. It's functional. But one thing I would recommend, you can see since it wraps around the bottom here, this has the tendency it will bottom out. I did have one here that I was doing some testing with and sanding in there as well. And if that bottom hits the ground, this plastic is more brittle than the plastic that's used for the traditional stunt cycle. So it can and it will break with potential use. So this version I made is going to be used for the putting on the shelf. It's going to be kind of a showpiece. I'm going to be making another version of this fairing where I remove the bottom such that I don't have that issue. And then since it can't be glued here, I'm going to have holes that line up with the rivet areas, and I'll be using the little rings for twisty, or for the zip ties to hold that together. So that way I can jump with it, and if I break a piece, I can just swap it out with another one. Okay, so I hope that helps. I think that's everything that I wanted to share. Please, if you make a stunt cycle, Stratocycle from this, please post pictures online. I would love to see what other people have done with this particular kit. So thanks a lot. I hope you enjoy it. See you later.